Hello everybody, the Lord Root here, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Play Kerbal Space Program Career Mode. So I thought I would just start out by launching, I guess the stuff we'll need to detect Kethane around Minmus, and also some extra fuel storage. As you can see, we have a fairly large stack here that includes our Kethane scanning satellite, but it also, on top of that, includes a docking adapter that'll let us basically attach 5 fuel tanks to our station. The idea behind this is pretty simple. We're going to basically send this out, and we'll use we'll use the whatchamacallit, the fuel tanks, in conjunction with a mining rig that we'll set down in order to set this thing up. So we'll just we'll go ahead and do that. I know I've done some testing on this. I know this thing can more or less get to Minmus without incident. But what I think I've decided I'm going to do is, since it would take forever and a day for me to construct this thing on camera, I'm going to basically do the supplementary launches off camera. I'll show you the rockets so that you can see that I did in fact construct them and that I hadn't cheated my way into orbit. But given the length of this, I'm sure it'll take at least 4 hours to get this completely constructed. So I mean, maybe not, but I mean, it's I do want to avoid this being boring. We're also going to do some research that will enable us to essentially, get this thing, get the things we need for our lander, maybe some other things. So I might finish up the Minmus research today. Or at least just do a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 Minmus landings. I've been thinking about what I could do for other kinds of research, since that would be very helpful at this point, because we do, we do definitely want to start working on interplanetary missions. Whether or not we actually have a window for any of those missions is going to be questionable. I'm actually, I mean, I may at some point decide to just say that these guys are dutifully doing their, they're diligently doing their duty on the space station and mining and getting tons of research, and we might send a mission to Duna where there will be a lot of opportunities for us to do science, because it's one thing to send a sample return mission, and in fact I have considered doing a sample return mission to the sun as well, but with that having been said, we don't want, we want this to essentially be about exploring the, exploring the Kerbal system, which, as we'll find, is going to turn out to be difficult. I mean, I think definitely, we can I guess, set this up so that, at some point, we can obviate the need eventually to, to do all these different launches. To where maybe, if we design our spacecraft correctly, that the, only thing we'll be sending up is maybe these capsules for collecting data. And I do eventually, want to start thinking about doing bases on other uh, planetary bodies. But with that having been said, that's actually not the world's easiest thing to pull off. I mean, it's once we get far out enough, the trouble with doing bases is that we have a couple of options here. I mean, we basically can construct everything in orbit, or we can send individual missions. Oh, pardon me. And for the purposes of realism, um, we do want to send everything we can in one mission. So we might do an Earth orbit rendezvous, which would probably be it would probably make sense to do. Of course, to deal with that is, we have to deal with construction as well. So we're talking about things that take little in-game time compared to those which take a bit of a longer I guess a bit of a longer playing time to do. We'll have to weigh those ideas accordingly. Fortunately, for us, I mean, we don't have to worry about life support. Although I am thinking about, once I'm satisfied with this series, developing a new series based off of, just really starting the space program in a more realistic way. It turns out there are mods that let you edit the tech tree, and those will lead us to I suppose a more realistic um, space program. Oh, we need to angle down just a little bit. And I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. I think a real space program, or a more realistic space program, will lead to a sort of you know program based off of starting with space planes, with rudimentary space planes, which does to some degree seem a bit counterintuitive. The reason we want to use space planes is that there's a lot about aerodynamics that when you're designing spacecraft that it makes sense to know about. Generally, like with Kerbals, it's the exception rather than the rule, that there would be manned rocketry, but no actual space planes. There are a couple of tech tree mods which do make this a little bit more realistic. I mean, I think the KSP guys are going more for, you know, I guess, maybe not fun so much. I mean, I know fun has to factor into it just a little bit. Because let's be honest, they want to sell the game. And if they couldn't sell the game, then that would be a bit of a problem for them because they are, after all, Squad is a business and they are trying to make money. And I think a lot of people, when they play Kerbal Space Program, they initially want to fly rockets, not fly space planes. Which, to my way of thinking, is a fair enough argument for making rockets, um, this essential part of career mode. On the other hand, I think there is a pretty good argument to be made that you have this sort of progression that, in the sense of, career mode, it doesn't make much sense for us to start out with manned rocketry. I mean, I guess in some way, like, it does fit with the Kerbal philosophy that you would send up these incredibly dangerous untested vehicles before you do a relatively safe, unmanned flight. But it's not, in my opinion, it's not entirely realistic. And I mean that's okay, I think. It's not exactly, I guess, a crime for them to take some liberty with with the progression of spaceflight because it is a video game. And I think if we focus too much on the fact that, you know, it's not realistic, then it could be a bit of a problem. Another thing you'll probably notice is that we are slightly inclined, and I have been trying to figure out just a little bit, I guess what the optimal insertion for Minmus is. Unfortunately, it seems to be that, and I'm sure I will be very strongly inclined whenever I get up to Apple apps. It's not an easy thing to work out because your inclination, to some degree, depends strongly on the rotation of the planet, and I'm not sure we got that right. The best deal may be for us to actually stay fairly, um, fairly on the mark. Yeah, I mean, it looks like to me that, we'll just, we'll set our target real quick, but it looks like to me that we may have hit that, but that, oh, that's Ike. Let's see what our actual descending node is. Yeah, I mean, we're at least closer than we could be. Unfortunately for us, our ascending node is very close to our Apple axis, which is nice because we do have a bunch of extra fuel. Normally, a burn like this would take several, maybe 200 or 300 meters per second delta V. But want this to, we do want this to come down just a little bit. And you know what? I think, I will turn off the, that's not what I wanted. Oh, okay, I did turn off Kethane. That does make things a little bit less aggravating. But you'll notice that it is very difficult for us to get our ascending node quite where we want it. And that has a lot to do with the fact that we do have a limited burn on this. I think 0.1 is going to be good enough for us. If you've been keeping up with Scott Manley, he does point out that having these burns combined into one is a little bit more efficient. That's 80. I think I've burned just a little bit too much. That seems like a good orbit for us. At any rate, we are going to want to burn pretty quickly. And we are in sort of a weird burn configuration, because normally, you know, if we were just orbiting Kerbin in an equatorial orbit, we'd keep this thing straight as an arrow, and we would, you know, we would just burn. Unfortunately, that's easier said than done. I mean, that actually was not too bad of a burn, though. Now, of course, we are a bit sluggish because of our payload, but you know, we'll end up in a pretty good orbit, I think. Probably not the best orbit one can choose to be in, but that actually looks pretty good. And we're only 0.1 off, which I like. Unfortunately for us, I think, let's go out and find Minmus real quick. We may have a bit of an issue because of the way I'm doing patched codics. Let's just bring this thing in closer. We do have, unfortunately, we do have a possible Minmus encounter, and we are on the wrong side, which I'm not very happy about. We need to come in on the other side. And because our orbit is a little bit on the unstable side, let's see, are we coming out where we want to? I think that's our exit node. So that may be us. One of the nice things about this design, though, is that we will at the same time be doing a little bit of refueling, which means that we can send people back. Now let's see. I think this means that our target node is going to be, at this point in time, a little bit above our retrograde marker. So we'll just get there and burn. And you know what? We might as well. I'm going to do a little bit of a test. Let's set up an alarm that kills warp from our current maneuver node. And let us just save that. And we want to let's modify this a bit. I think 30 seconds would be good. As for why, okay, that I'm still rather new to this. You know what it was? It went off because it went off because I set it to go off at 30 minutes, and of course we are 15 minutes out. We'll just see if this kills our alarm this close in. In the interim, I'm probably going to be burning between 12 and 11 seconds. There we go. There we go. So that is, that's actually rather handy. Um, yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll do our burn. It probably looks like we're burning through our fuel at this point. Which we are, but you'd be surprised how much fuel we have left over. I mean, it's actually not that bad of a deal for us. We are just very slightly off. Let's just... Yeah, we did modify our approach a little bit. And this is rather, rather ridiculous. Um, we'll just want to bring this down, I think, to, we'll want to bring this down just a little bit. And we'll be very slightly off, I feel. Unfortunately, that's not an easy thing for us to correct for, but we do have plenty of RCS. that is a 3-day encounter. We bring that down just a little bit more. There's, of course, a moon encounter there that we're going to have to be careful about. But actually, that is a pretty interesting encounter. That would make for a very interesting little scientific mission. We're gonna have to be careful here, of course, because we have burned through a lot of our monopropellant already. More than... we encountered the moon, didn't we? Yes, we did. So we're going to... That's one of the problems I've run into with... Let's just, let's kill this, and set us up to, kill warp 30 minutes before our sphere of influence change. Although that is, it doesn't look like that's going to work because I don't have patched conics set up. It's kind of the consequence of us, I guess, going through the moon's sphere of influence. And I believe we are on the completely wrong side of the moon, which is going to make this a little bit more difficult for us. We do want to, we want to get this guy up in a fairly decent orbit here. It's a little bit more than I had intended to burn, but unfortunately it's... I can see, more or less why this is the way it is. Which should lead us to the conclusion that we have to be careful with our encounters. I wish there were an easier way to inspect the encounters. Unfortunately, there's not. But what we'll do here is we'll set up an alarm about, I don't know, 15 seconds in. We should be more or less on the nose. Okay. So we'll just go ahead, we'll burn now. And that will give us our 180-degree inclination change that we want. And you can see we still actually have plenty of fuel even after that very expensive change in inclination. Now, of course, we didn't go up to our, um, to our standard height here, and I think I will just raise periaps just a little bit more, at least to 200, because, as you might recall, we actually have two spacecraft that we want to worry about. So let's see, Minmus Station set as target. There we go. We will get this more or less in line. And in fact, in reality, this needn't be perfect. I mean, at some point, we're going to we're going to want to set this up so that we are properly inclined, and instead of, I guess, tinkering with that much farther, I'm going to get this thing maybe down to 0.3. It doesn't need to be perfect, as I said, but we'll just we'll add another alarm and get ourselves into position, because that is pretty much what we're going to do. And you'll notice that this is New Year's Eve, it looks like. I just realized that now granted, I think a year on Kerbin is like 400 days for simplification. And I am going the complete wrong way, it looks like. Let's just kill that maneuver node. I should be doing this here. Point one. Well, that is way better, in my opinion. But we'll get that down. You'll see we'll actually have plenty of fuel in order to make our burn, for which we will only need a couple of seconds. This is actually, I hadn't really played around with Kerbal Alarm Clock, but this is actually a very useful tool, at least to my way of thinking. And so what we'll do here is we will get this thing more or less lined up, and we'll add the alarm, and we're gonna give ourselves, I think, 10 seconds. Let's just make sure it kept that. Yeah. So yeah, we're we're slowing down. That is actually really useful. We are very slightly inclined there, but that's okay. I think that's a perfectly dandy orbit or inclination we have there. And then, of course, we'll get ourselves into orbit. Or into a better orbit, shall we say, because we are technically in orbit. It's just very highly elliptical, as you can see. We want to get into a circular orbit. .307 versus 309. Well, that is perfectly fine by my standards. And that is a 5-hour lead time on that. So we are somewhere up here, I reckon. Now, I learned a good trick for making this work out pretty well. And it's actually, once you think about it, it's a completely obvious trick that makes, to my way of thinking, a lot of sense. Because it's it's one of those deals to where what's nice about it is you're more or less, alright, that doesn't need to be that precise, but you're more or less, doing your deal. You're leveraging orbital mechanics in a very intuitive way. And that way is, of course, by making your encounter, basically always line up with its target. Now we will have, just for the purposes of, I suppose, making this thing easier to deal with. The basic idea is that you set up your encounter, and you pretty much, when you start drifting off course, you push your apoapsis, and instead of completely nulling out your velocity, which to me makes a little bit more sense. Let's just get that inclination on up there. I guess we have to stage, don't we? Now, I think this is a bit of a glitch. I'm not sure that I should still have, I should still have this flight engineer. Although, you know what? Yeah, actually should, because flight engineer is actually on the, oh, we're escaping. That is, that's not good. We don't want to be on an escape course, because then bringing this thing out here makes zero sense. Let's just modify that just a little bit. There we go. This is the part that becomes tricky here, because we want to make sure that we put ourselves in an orbit that allows us to easily jettison this thing. And I think this has the amount of delta V required to do it, but well, that's one way to get rid of it. That wasn't the way I intended, but let's see if we've suffered any structural damage. I don't believe we have. Really, as long as we are able to keep this thing going, we're going to be fine. However, it did... You know, there's something about this that I'm not sure I like entirely. Let's just get a sense of our inclination real quick, because it's 51 degrees. So we are ascending, which means we're going to want to push this thing over the other direction. That would, of course, make a lot more sense. You can already sort of tell that we're, you know, we've almost hit the mark here. We're at 87.7 degrees. We'll just fine tune this. And we'll hope that this does not lead to any major drift. Let's see, what is that? Periapsis. We do want this, you know, to be a fairly straightforward deal. And I'm thinking I'm gonna put this thing, this is where it becomes annoying, because you can't really tell what your apsis is. There we go, I just had it. That is, to my way of thinking, a very reasonable apsis to have. And we actually don't need to be perfect in this regard, but I do, you know, I do rather like, having this set up so that it's, you know, so it, is inclined. So we have a periapsis burn coming up pretty soon. We'll unset this as the target. That's 2 hours. Let's bring this sucker on in. I did underestimate this somewhat. 12 is a little bit too high. I mean, well, actually 12 might be okay. Because the idea is essentially that by bringing ourselves up to, they're about 12 meters per second, we are, oh, that would explain it actually. I didn't get that on the mark. By bringing this up, you know, circularizing this orbit is going to be fairly easy. Now, unfortunately for us, this probe has a lot more control than than we really want it to. Let's see what's our, yeah, we're gonna bring that down just a little more, because if we're going to hit 12, we might as well get as close to 12 as we can. So we'll set an alarm for that, and I'm gonna give ourselves about a minute to deal with that, because we're going to be dealing with something completely different here, as you'll see. So we'll switch, and that will, that will more or less put us where we want. Of course, we have this bug here. I will need to rename that craft eventually. It's, it's fairly, ambiguously named at the moment. But yeah, the cool thing for us is this is what we can do. That's actually fairly good. I'm not going to screw around with that. That encounter is when. Oh, that's going to be cutting it pretty close. Well, maybe not actually. Because that's 30 seconds beyond our other thing. That will mean, of course, that we can start, we can start working on that. So let's just, we've added that, that's 23 minutes. Wow. That is, that's a little bit better than I'd expected initially. So let's just get that going. Okay, what just happened here? We hit the wrong node. That was not quite what I had in mind. There's going to be consequences for that, of course. With the main one being that we aren't going to get our encounter as easily. Or maybe we will. I believe I know precisely what I did. You know what, I'm not even going to bother pushing that in because we're going to have to do a breaking burn. What I am going to do, however, is I am going to kill this node. And I'm going to say about a minute in. Oh, we can set on distance if we wanted to. Yeah, it'll give us about a minute. That's going to take several minutes. Whoa. Okay, yeah, let's jump to ship and restore maneuver node. This is becoming quite nice. I actually rather like this. So there we go. It doesn't have to be spot on. And I could actually, I think I could stand to allocate just a little bit more time in this sense. Because it turns out that our node, we actually end up, jumping to the ship immediately. When I initially planned that, I thought we were going to have to account for that. But that turns out not to be the case. And you know what, while we're here, I think we might as well, get this thing down to 10. You might say, why would we even think of doing that? The answer is because if we don't, I mean, we won't be able to scan the surface as quickly, which, to be quite honest, I'm gonna cut that out of the video because there's no way to concurrently scan the surface while you're doing other things, unfortunately, and that is a shame. That is a little bit, of a problem. You know what we'll do while we're waiting on this, by the way? We will actually change this to, Minmus Kethane scanner. That seems like a good name for it. Are we out of power already? I do find that very bizarre. Anyway, we'll just get right on that maneuver node. And we'll go ahead. This will take 19 minutes. I'm not gonna give us a minute, I'm gonna give us like really 10 seconds. And you know what? Really, I should be activating the detector here. And I did figure out how to disable that annoying beep that this thing does. This is the part of the issue with traveling down so low, you know, so low below the thingy. The I have an idea of what I'm trying to say, but my words are escaping me right now. Hey, that isn't bad. If we turn on the Kethane map, you'll see we've already begun to start scanning for Kethane. So, I'll just go through and I'll scan for that later because we need it. We are about to get a request to switch. Now, why would I give us a minute into our closest approach? Well, we do have to turn, retrograde to the target, which is an important enough reason. I mean, we will have a lot of velocity. And we'll just, when we get in, we'll do our thing. Now, we're not going to break completely in this instance, because what we're going to do is we're just going to slow down just a very little bit. And we will, set this. Did I change my... I did change that. Okay. That means we are going to have to push this thing forward and not move in so quickly. This should, in turn, make us a little bit closer. In fact, we can get this thing pretty close to the actual, there we go, we burned a little bit too much. And there is RCS on this thing though, thankfully. I mean, if we push in just a little bit more, we will have to slow down a little bit. If I can. And we do want to be careful on this. I'm going to use from this point on, except where we must absolutely brake. Why are we pushing away? We should not be doing that. This should be going towards the... Oh, this is actually a little bit on the confusing side. I guess, you know what, I will burn. Or I'll make that adjustment when we get to our, station. Or at least close enough, because we are fairly close in. And, we do have plenty of fuel, at least, to help us at least get this thing on the right track. We do we do want to make sure that we, instead of nulling out our velocity completely, because that would make very little sense from our standpoint, we do want to push this thing down into a fairly decent orbit. And we are 0.1 kilometers away. We can get it further on the mark if we felt like it, but really there's no point. I mean, we have plenty of fuel left. It'll be almost enough for us to halfway fill up that one tank. And we will have to be careful with time warping, because we will zip right past this thing if we are not careful. And you know what, I'll push that in just a little bit. That should in fact tell us that we're now at either 0.1 or 0. Okay, that was not the intended effects. We do rather like, not completely missing our target. I probably should have used RCS there, considering how much we're, that we're burning. It's okay if we're not exactly spot on, because, really, when we get here, we're not going to collide with the station, right? That would be absurd. And at any rate, I think we can stand to go a little bit faster, so we're going to adjust that so we're at least going 1 meter per second. How are we doing on our monopropellant? Not as good as I would have hoped. However, that's something that I think we'll be able to deal with very easily. Okay, so we're coming in for our final approach. I don't want to clip this thing too hard coming in. That could be quite bad. And it's actually rather difficult for me to tell how far away I truly am, because this is relative, I believe, to... Actually, that may be accurate. In which case, I think I'm close enough. Let's set up our Clampotron. It'll control from here. We do want to make sure that... I'm not exactly sure what happened, or you know what it must be, we might have gotten hit by exhaust or something. Either that or the game is remembering the last rotation and is not really, applying it correctly. Oh well, we'll get this thing pointed north, which is where we expect it to be anyhow. And we'll need just a little bit in the way of RCS for us to completely get rid of any trace of our space debris. Now, why I'm so anal about that, I guess it's probably because nobody really likes space debris to begin with, but you know, we'll just point this thing this direction down here. Let's see, we gotta get this thing rotated. Rotation is very important with tricoupler designs. With the new designs, I decided I was going to use the docking port seniors. They're, for one, they're a little bit easier to use than well, in reality, man, are we rotating again? Now, granted, that may have been my fault. I tried to move the entire station. Okay, let's not induce any more rotation. That may have actually been an okay heading I was on, come to think of it. At any rate, let's wait for this thing to get below the marker or whatever, and we will begin with our docking procedure immediately. And that's what I like about this, is that this new Navy fish, well, it's not new, it's been out for quite some time, but it's, you know, this Navy fish mod is actually quite useful in speeding up docking, and I should be moving in just a little bit. I think we can stand to move in just a little bit faster than we have. And I may slow down eventually. However, things are looking good right now. I mean, we're actually, as best as I can tell, we're docked pretty damn well. You know, issues of, I guess issues with, you know, perfect alignment notwithstanding. There may not be much that can be done about that easily, though. And I think the real solution is that we go for it. because if we do not, then we may find ourselves in a bit of a pickle, which we do not want to be. And I think, okay, this is not good. That is, wow. That was not quite what I had intended. Let's see. One moment, I've got a phone call. Well, I've returned. I had a issue going on to where, somebody ended up calling me, and this is actually a day later in the recording. I just didn't get time to finish it because I'm over at somebody's house right now, but, since the kids are asleep and I guess, the, um, the parents asleep too, I decided I'd go ahead and rectify our weird situation where we're hanging by this one docking port. So we control from here. This appears to be the proper orientation for us. And that hopefully won't be too difficult to, hopefully that won't be too difficult if I can keep myself oriented correctly, which is really the trick here. So we'll do that. Except I hit the wrong key, it appears. We may not end up with as much monopropellant as I would have liked in this case. So, yeah, we'll start pushing in. And that should be more or less, that should be us right there. We'll be, that actually does look like we're properly oriented this time. Sometimes it's difficult to judge, these, the docking with these, tri-decouplers, because you do have to be, in order to get docked completely, you do have to be in a fairly good, you have to be in the right rotation and the right orientation as well. But at any rate, we're docked now, and we can start taking this thing here. I think we're probably out of fuel there. We'll dump as much fuel as we can in there. And then we'll stick the rest into this one spacecraft, because it is running a little bit low on fuel. And it's not necessarily that we would need, that's the wrong way, we want to do the other way. It's not necessarily that we would need any more fuel per se, but at any rate, one of the things I am going to do here is I'm going to replenish some of this monopropellant, because in principle we shouldn't really need all that much. we'll just quick save and we will detach our unit. And we will crash it straight into the ground. This is going to be purely using monopropellant. And even though we're in a high orbit, or a high, we have a high orbital velocity, we should have enough monopropellant to get us down if we don't abuse it. In fact, even if we did, we should have enough to get down. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to more or less use this. I guess I'm going to play for a bit as promised, and I'm going to get this thing set up. You can see it's almost Kerbal New Year's, or I think it is. I'm not completely sure. We'll just zoom in here. We are very slowly lowering our Apple apps. If we run out of fuel, which it doesn't look like we will, I mean, we'll more or less get this thing down exactly to where we want it. We want it to at least be, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters per second of delta V to continue. We're using the, we're using the, I guess the Oberth effect, because at this point I guess it's not precisely the Oberth effect, but at our apoapsis, we should have the least velocity. That means it's easier for us to kill our to kill our, I suppose, our periapsis, because we can bring that to 0 much more easily, which we really do not have to. And we will eventually, it looks like, crash into the surface of the planet. I'm just going to switch to Minmus Station and have a look at that. Because we do want to be good citizens and not pollute Minmus. I mean, my thought is that this thing will eventually crash. Of course, it may have not been such a good idea to kill the RCS. And you know what? I can actually reload that quick save if needed, because I don't think I quick saved. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, eventually we would be hitting the surface of the planet, but I don't really want to wait for that. That's too treacherous. And of course, when we do this, there's something weird going on with camera angles lately. Did I overdo that? I believe this might have been where I did, to some degree, over Yeah, I already put the monopropellant in. We didn't really need all that much, though. All we needed was, um, maybe a couple more units. I'm not even gonna put the full amount of RCS in there. We'll quick save now. I mean, we did end up gaining RCS nonetheless, so it's, in this case, I'm not even concerned about, how, um, really how effective our, uh, trajectory is. So it's, and we still have 13 units, so I think that's going to be enough. And we'll physical warp at this point, because there's really no reason to keep it around. I mean, it's questionable whether or not I should have, actually, um, I guess, well, that's good enough for me. I'll just bring that down. That's actually rather interesting looking. There we go. That was enough to guarantee, I believe. Yep. Well, very good. Um, we'll just leave that there, and I will go ahead now. I'm going to go to the Space Center, at least show y'all these rockets in action. Well, maybe not in action. I'll do the first one in action, I think. I'm not going to record the whole flight because it could get really boring, but we do actually happen to have two vessels that are going to serve as our fuel tanks, and those will be, those will be the station tank, which is, believe it or not, this thing once it gets in, it has just enough delta V for us to dock at everything. I'm not exactly sure if Kerbal Engineering is being truthful with me, but you can see I added the fins there for more stability. There is a lot more in the way of RCS. We have 4 tanks, so we'll be able to fill up, to some degree at least, those RCS tanks. And then we also have a docking terminator as well that we'll use to cap the end. That will hopefully mean that it will, wobble a lot less when we dock to it. But that is our unit there. We do have a ton of Delta V, or a ton of RCS fuel just in case. So I guess I'm going to go and, well, I didn't show you the entire thing, did I? And then, of course, that happens. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It wobbles a little bit, as you might expect, but we do have a ton of fuel nonetheless there, so it's good. Let's launch one of the tanks. So, these guys are pretty, they're pretty, straightforward in terms of flight. I kinda wish I had the large probe body, though. It would make this thing a lot more compact. You can see I'm doing the weird, this weird thing where, Um, we have, you know, I'm not really sure what I'm saying at this point. I guess what I'm trying to say is we have this weird thing where, I think I'm gonna try and put these more or less in orbit, all in one go and send them maybe an hour or two apart from each other. Maybe even not that much. And we are actually going a lot faster than I wanted to. We are going to have some losses from that, of course. But you know what, we'll deal with that. We are getting out of the atmosphere a little bit faster than normal. And you could see, we'll be dropping these tanks soon. This vehicle is a lot wider, though. So, I reckon if, we're careful, then this guy will last us, way past our gravity turn, and we will want to be careful about that. I mean, you wouldn't think just this would be necessary. I will admit, I've probably engaged in overkill just a little bit, but I think we're going to be able to get these extra rockets up to about 18, maybe 20 kilometers. That is, that's going to be us staging there, and for some reason when we stage it does, mess with um, our velocity some. We'll just kick up that stage just a little bit. We do, of course, want to get our inclination down. Why are we rotating so rapidly? Maybe, maybe the velocity is a bit more than... Okay, what are you doing, SAS? Are we off balance somehow? This is going to be a lot more difficult to fly. Wow, that is, I don't believe I've ever seen that rotation pop up before. Am I physics warping? That is kind of weird. We didn't really effectively fly this thing this time, did we? Well, that is, that means we're very highly inclined. I'm not entirely sure what is causing this drift. Because when I tested this, we didn't run into this issue. Maybe we lost a winglet or something. Well, at any rate, we are way more inclined than I wanted to be. And that's something I'm sure I'll have to contend with. I don't know if there's some intrinsic instability in this, or what. We seem to, we seem to have control now, at least. So, yeah, that could have been bad. We'll just, what we'll do, we'll get this, circularized real quick. That would, probably be within our best interest. And we'll, we'll bring this up about, I don't know, maybe 80. And we'll bring that down just a little bit. What, Judah? I guess the dog wants me to take him out, so I chose a good time to, to end this. Or I guess to cut the video once I circularize. Now I'm gonna get this thing circularized, and I'm going to take him out real quick. But hopefully it won't be to pursue a dog in heat, because he does have a nasty habit of doing that. We got, what is it, 2 seconds of burn? I mean, we actually do have a fairly fantastic amount of Delta V on this thing. What is going on with my controls? This is bizarre. I didn't really want to use RCS this early. But we'll figure it out. And so we'll just get the rest of that Delta V going. It's not going to be perfectly circular now, but that's okay, it doesn't need to be. Anyway, I will come back and I guess show you more video whenever we're about to get this thing docked. So we are now going through and setting up our final maneuver for putting on the docking terminator. That should happen fairly shortly. We're of course using Kerbal alarm clock to make sure that we don't miss our warp point or whatever. And of course we'll delete that timer. It doesn't look like we have much fuel left, but we have almost 1,000 RCS, which is going to be pretty nice to have. We'll just create another alarm here. We'll kill warp maybe about 30 seconds before closest approach, because we're going to want to at some point slow ourselves down. And I have no idea what happened here. But it seems to have warped me right through the, right through the thing. Which is a bit unfortunate. I probably should have saved there. Oh well. Maybe soon. That's actually not too bad. That's a separation of, some, I guess, 25, meters per second squared or something like that. Or not meters per second squared, some 25 meters. I don't know why I stated the time in meters per second squared. But, you know what, we'll push this guy down. This may actually bring us closer. So, yeah, we're just going to speed up a little bit. That would probably be for the best. And, yeah, we'll, you know what, we'll just have to deal with that. But that is currently in some 8 minutes time. Which, actually could be a bit of a problem because our orbital velocity is not quite what I would want it to be. But that'll be okay, I think. We certainly have plenty of fuel left over to null ourselves out. We just have to make sure we're pointing in the right direction. And what just happened here? That was kind of weird. The game just hung there for a second. This seems to be causing a lot of issues, this lag. And this is the point to where we're about to run out of our fuel, doing this incredibly dangerous maneuver of ours. Yeah, that's us being out of fuel. But we do have RCS. I think it's lag from the space station. As you can see, we actually have a fair amount of it. It's because our space station at this point is so big. But to my way of thinking, it's something to be proud of. Of course, I say that because I've been spending hours, getting these things properly set up. But you'll see that this has been about a week after New Year's, and this construction process did take a lot longer than I had initially expected. But yeah, here we go. We're just going to we are going to get this thing ready to dock now. I'm not sure why I put all this RCS on. I guess I must have anticipated at some point having to fill up those tanks. So we only really need a small amount of RCS for. And anyway, I guess it's worth mentioning that I did have a bit of an accident the first time I, you know, did this. We did accidentally haul ass into the space station, which is no good. It's no good at all, but there's not really much you can do about that. We broke a solar panel, so I thought, maybe that'll be okay. We could certainly deploy modules with solar panels on them just fine. And that means, of course, we're going to want to be pointing to the south. Now, even with this reaction wheel on here, this particular thingy is well, first of all, it's not helped by the lag. I mean, this at least we can crash into the moon down below. But one of the nice things about this guy is that we are pretty much going to get this thing terminated so it won't wobble. And I believe if you do the math on it, each one of those terminators is if I'm not mistaken, a full tank and no, it's a half tank and an eighth, I think. And so we've actually got a total of about to my way of thinking, I think it's like almost 7 orange tanks of fuel. And that's going to help us a lot whenever we get these guys coupled. Okay, so I'm currently trying to dock the Terminator to the space station. It does get very laggy here, and I discover there is a bit of a rotation that will become apparent as you watch this thing try to dock, and it's not just, skew, it actually is or perspective rather, it actually is the station rotating, as you can see. So I switch to the space station. I forget to turn on RCS, so I just put on the RCS so that it'll stabilize, and docking the Terminator becomes a little bit easier after that. And once I dock, what essentially happens is that now I'm transferring fuel. I had a little bit of UI lag, and
And then, of course, after this, we're releasing the clamps on this.
Frankly, I think everything should be attached. If it's not, well then I'm going to be in trouble anyway. But we're just going to bring the orbital velocity down just a bit. In fact, more than a bit. We're going to bring it down a lot. And we do probably have more monopropellant than we need, but sometimes you over-design things. Anyway, this has been Thy Lord Roots, and I will see you later.